If you are still wondering what makes someone a Republican these days, Jeff Billman, who reports for the Assembly in North Carolina, he says he's wondering too.
It's changing, or I think it's changed, or it might be. I mean, over the last decade, I think it's changed.
Give me 3 adjectives to describe the Republican Party
In North Carolina, I mean, MAGA. They are, I think you could arguably say, extremist, and they are very, very, just 3.
You're like, I only need 1, actually.
I mean, MAGA kind of describes it.
On Super Tuesday, Jeff was watching to see how MAGA North Carolina Republicans have become. Voters were deciding not just who their presidential candidates would be, but who would compete for local offices like Attorney General, Secretary of State, Governor. The gubernatorial race was especially interesting to Jeff. Mark Robinson, the lieutenant governor, was locked in a 3-way contest. And Robinson, he is a candidate who seems designed to test just how much MAGA the Republican electorate will bear.
He is adamantly anti-gay, anti-abortion. He's a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, can you tick off some of the wilder things Mark Robinson believes?
Oh, boy. Where to begin? So he just has years of Facebook posts where he said all kinds of outlandish stuff, kind of celebrating the Kent State massacre. He wrote about how, he didn't get along with women because they talked too much. The acceptance of homosexuality leads to pedophilia, leads to the end of civilization. That transgender people should have to use the bathroom outside. He believes that children should not be taught science in elementary school.
Like science, not like evolution or certain elements of science or like gender theory.
No, science is woke.
You said that on Super Tuesday you were watching the margins.
Yes.
To see how much certain people won.
Yes.
When you looked at Mark Robinson's margins, what did you see?
He outdid his polling. He outperformed.
He won the state.
Oh, yeah. He won every county. He won 2/3 of the vote. And, this was despite a pretty one of the folks who was running against him was a trial lawyer who spent about $5 million, including on ads that basically called him an anti-Semite.
Which doesn't sound like is an unfair accusation.
It's not. He denied the Holocaust.
5 or 10 years ago, would Mark Robinson have had a shot at leading your state?
Not a chance. The bar for what is acceptable has gone away.
Today on the show, welcome to the Republican Party of 2024. Why Mark Robinson's primary win in North Carolina shows it is not just Trump setting the GOP's extreme agenda. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies, all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. I want to roll back the tape to the beginning. My understanding is that Mark Robinson is a relative newcomer to official politics. Could you just give me a sense of where he came from?
So he was born in Greensboro. His father was an abusive alcoholic, died when he was about 12 years old. His mother, had like 9, 10 children. They were never really rich. Robinson went to college, but then dropped out in one semester. Ended up like shuffling around a couple of jobs, got laid off from a furniture manufacturing job for which he blames NAFTA. He became deeply religious, I think at some point after he met his now wife and paid for her abortion.
My understanding is that the first time he really broke through to Republican activists was 2018 because he gave this speech at the Greensboro City Council. What was the speech about? How did that come to be?
So the story goes, he was working in a furniture plant at the time. And this was right after Parkland, the Parkland shooting in Florida, where at that school where I think, 17 kids died, something like that. And the city of Greensboro had a gun show, like one of those shows where people, show up and sell guns, that sort of thing. And in Robinson's telling, he wanted to buy this like AR-15 that somebody was going to sell at this thing. And the Greensboro City Council was reacting to this shooting, wanted to cancel the event, as a lot of, I think, cities did in the wake of that tragedy. And this kind of pissed Mark Robinson off. So he went down and delivered sort of an impromptu speech before the city council.
But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script.
And it went viral, and it got the attention of folks in Fox News.
The speech is impressive. Like, if you watch it as just like a piece of political theater, it's incredibly successful.
He is an extraordinary speaker. He's very compelling. He has a sort of preacher-like voice. He's he draws in audiences, and that was his first sort of exposure. And that led to, invitations to like the NRA and the Gun Owners of America and those types of groups, and, hits on Fox News. And he, pretty quickly parlayed that celebrity, the sort of Fox News celebrity, into a run for lieutenant governor. And he won by about 3 points. And, he has essentially used the lieutenant governor's office to immediately begin running for governor.
It strikes me that so little has stuck against Robinson. When you've denied the Holocaust, when you've said men should be in charge of women because they talk too much, when you've said school teachers are indoctrinating students with propaganda and not just like woke, not just the typical stuff, but like basic subjects are a problem. These are extreme views. And then there's stuff like the hypocritical stuff, like the fact that he's very strongly anti-abortion, believes it's murder. He paid for his own wife's abortion before they were married, and now I guess regrets it. But that just seems like something that would count you out as a politician not that long ago.
You would think so. But it's sort of a microcosm or a smaller scale version of Trump, right? Like you would think like everyone thought that the Access Hollywood stuff would have killed Trump in 2016, and it didn't. And all the other things that came out about Trump in the subsequent years didn't necessarily kill him. Robinson is running in, I don't think the Democrats really went after him hard in 2020, and I don't know why.
Did that change this year?
Oh, yeah. The day after the primary, day after he won the nomination, HuffPost unearths video that I either came from the Democratic Governors Association Stein campaign or the Democratic Party, where Robinson says, I absolutely think we should go back to a time where, women didn't vote or something like that.
I absolutely want to go back to the America where women couldn't vote. Do you know why? Because in those days, we had people who fought for real social change, and they were called Republicans.
They're just sitting on a mountain of oppo. And, everybody who is inside political circles knows that that sort of thing is going to be leaking out for the next 6 months. The biggest question that folks have told me is like, how much of this stuff do you put out before you overwhelm people? Because if you put out too much, you just numb people to at a certain point, it sort of gets baked in, right? And so it loses kind of the shock value.
Now that Mark Robinson is headed into the general election, Democrats are counting on his more out there ideas not playing very well with North Carolina's broader voting population. So I asked Jeff whether Mark Robinson's campaign is likely to moderate itself at all. He said, that's already started.
I mean, one of the interesting thing, I was at Mark Robinson's victory party last week when he won, and the word abortion was not spoken. Neither was like transgender. Neither was, any of the things that he's made front and center, guns, whatever. None of the stuff that has been sort of central to him and sort of animating him as a politician and as a Facebook commenter over the years. None of that stuff. It's all normal, education, economy, give teachers raises, et cetera, et cetera. So the kind of rebrand of, Mark Robinson 2.0 is happening. The problem is there's a very long history of Mark Robinson 1.0, right? And if the Democrats are even halfway competent, it's going to be very hard for that part of Mark Robinson's past to kind of disappear.
Let's talk about the Democrats, because in the fall, Robinson's going to face off against Democrat Josh Stein, who seems really like the opposite of Mark Robinson, a real normie in a lot of ways. So who's he and how's he going to position himself?
So we've had a Democratic governor for the last 8 years, a guy named Roy Cooper, and Cooper is sort of moderate, talks with an accent kind of guy. And Stein is sort of his heir apparent. They're run by, their campaigns are run by the same consultant. It's sort of the same machine. Stein is a little different. He comes from, his father was a sort of civil rights icon. He founded, I think it was the first integrated civil rights firm in the South. Stein was a state senator from Raleigh for several years. He became attorney general. He's won 2 very, very close elections, decided by a couple thousand votes both times. He is kind of a mild-mannered, moderate kind of guy.
He's Jewish, which is new.
He is Jewish. He would be the first Jewish governor. He is one of those guys that I don't know too many people who are, who hate him. I don't know very many people who are super excited to go out and vote for him, but he's fine. And his campaign is going to be, basically, hey, look, I'm not Mark Robinson.
The race reminds me so much of the gubernatorial race in Pennsylvania in 2022. And I say that because Pennsylvania, like North Carolina, is often thought of as a political battleground. And in 2022, you had Republican Doug Mastriano, very, very extreme Republican, running against Josh Shapiro, the Democrat. Josh Shapiro won. And it's interesting because in Pennsylvania, Democrats were chomping at the bit to run against Mastriano because they saw him as easy to defeat. Is that the case in North Carolina?
To a degree. So I used to live in Philadelphia, so I know a little bit about Pennsylvania politics. I think with somebody like Mastriano, Mastriano was a bit of a clown. I think, to be honest, I think with Robinson, he has a lot of extreme positions. But if you watch him speak, he is also very gifted, right? The way he sells himself can be very compelling. It speaks to sort of hard scrabble thing, and he's going to try and draw a really interesting comparison with Josh Stein, who grew up kind of privileged, went to Ivy League schools. Robinson's going to be the blue collar guy who worked at a plant, got laid off, and blames NAFTA, and kind of fought for everything he's got, and went bankrupt a bunch of times and lost his house, and had to earned everything he has, right? And I think there is some concern among Democrats that that's going to appeal to, segments of the party's base, including some black voters, especially like older black men.
When we come back, how race will factor in to this gubernatorial contest. This episode is brought to you by SAP. First, the bad news. SAP Business AI will not help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos, but it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, or identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, or automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations. So you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI. This episode is brought to you by SAP. First, the bad news. SAP Business AI will not help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos, but it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, or identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, or automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations. So you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI. It's an open question how race is going to play into this gubernatorial contest come November. If he was elected, Mark Robinson would be the first black governor in this state. And Republicans are hoping his candidacy will pull support from working class and non-white voters. That could be a big problem for Democrats.
I mean, we ran a story a couple weeks ago. It looked at there's a lot of sort of hand-wringing among Democrats about whether Josh Stein has weakness with black voters. I mean, one of the biggest problem the party has had in 2022, and the reason why it lost some statewide elections was that essentially black turnout in Charlotte fell off completely. And so there's been concern that Mark Robinson's going to be able to pick up, I mean, especially conservative black voters. And he's going around to some black churches that are more conservative and speaking there.
Well, it's interesting. There was a black woman who ran for attorney general in North Carolina this year, and she lost.
Satana, yeah.
But she spoke eloquently about this issue. Like she said, it would be a shame for the Republican ticket in North Carolina to be more diverse at the top than the Democratic ticket, especially when the Democrats depend on diverse voters. She basically said every election you ask black women to come out and nothing changes for us. And it seems like a real indictment of the party.
I mean, that's kind of true. There is, I mean, if you look at all of the, some of the marquee races, right? Like the governor's race, Josh Stein had a challenger, a black man who was a former Supreme Court justice named Mike Morgan. Mike Morgan got very little sort of establishment support and lost. Satana DeBerry is the district attorney in Durham County. She ran against a congressman named Jeff Jackson. Jackson had the party establishment support.
White guy.
Yeah, he's a white guy. And DeBerry didn't really come close.
And the makeup of the state, like the racial breakdown of the state, how does it compare to what the Democratic Party looks like?
Black voters are a significant part of the Democratic constituency. I mean, Democrats can't win without winning the black vote. They won't even come close. I mean, to be fair, there are, the state auditor is a black woman. She was just appointed and she's running for election. And so, I mean, it's not like there's no black people on the ballot, but I mean, I think in some of those marquee races and Satana DeBerry made a point that has been echoed by, a number of people that we've talked to, that it wasn't just that there were black primary challengers who lost. It was that the establishment backed the white folks because they thought they could win. And I don't know how much that's going to end up hurting Josh Stein and some of the other white candidates. But you don't need to lose a lot to lose the election. Like everything's going to be at the margins. If Robinson peels off, 5% of the black vote that, Stein might have otherwise gotten, the election's over.
Yeah, that's hard. That's slim.
Yeah. I mean, there are other dynamics too that, I mean, honestly, people kind of whisper about. I mean, the fact that nobody's really sure whether or how, Stein being Jewish is going to factor in. Nobody knows really if Robinson being black is going to, if there are some conservative, Republicans who won't vote for him no matter how conservative he is. because he's black. Those are sort of wild cards that I don't know that they're going to show up in polling. I don't know that they're, anybody really knows, but they're the kind of things that people sort of whisper about.
Here's the thing about North Carolina's Super Tuesday results. Mark Robinson is not the only radical to have won a Republican nomination. Dan Bishop, the Republican nominee for Attorney General, was the chief sponsor of the state's controversial bathroom bill back in 2016. Michelle Morrow, who Republicans are putting up for superintendent, is a homeschooler who marched on the Capitol on January 6th. She's also said the goal of Islam is evil. It might seem a little confusing to see such far-right candidates attracting support in a state that, in theory at least, is supposed to be purple. That's been North Carolina's reputation anyway, ever since Obama won this state back in 2008. But Jeff says it was never really that simple.
I think of it less as a purple state than as a Republican state that the right Democrat can win under the right circumstances. So while Obama won North Carolina, the party sort of establishment that had run the state, forever was starting to crack. And Republicans won in the midterms, in the big Tea Party midterms of 2010. They won the state. They got to redistrict the state. They drew themselves, uncrackable majorities. And I think the baseline for the state is that Republicans will win a generic statewide election about 52-48, which is close, right? But it's significant enough that it's not necessarily a toss-up. You have to have a candidate who is good, like Obama, or a Republican candidate who is bad, potentially like Mark Robinson.
You've talked about how Mark Robinson clinching the Republican nomination marks the beginning of this candidate trying to appeal to the mainstream, and that he's already doing that, just sort of not giving the kinds of speeches, saying the kinds of things he might have said a couple years ago. Do you think Robinson can stick to the script here? Is he disciplined in that way?
I have no idea. I don't know. I think Democrats are going to do their best to goad him into getting off script. I actually don't know. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the interesting things for the Robinson campaign, to see how sort of consistent Robinson can be and how well the candidate lets himself be managed. I think one of the issues they're going to have, though, is, there's so much he said, and there's so many things that are out there. And I suspect so many things that will come up that are still yet to be unearthed, that the Stein campaign and Democratic Party are sitting on, that he can try and rebrand and come out and be, I'm for, I'm just going to keep the economy going and all that sort of stuff. But the election's going to be about everything he's said over the last 10 years, everything he's posted on Facebook, every, speech he's made to, the Republican women's clubs, and
whether he stays quiet now or not.
Yeah, it's not going to matter. He's going to have to be, every interview he gives, and he doesn't really give many that are outside of friendly media, but every interview he gives is going to be, about that, about those things, about, every debate question is going to be about that stuff. I don't see any scenario in which Mark Robinson's past isn't the star of this show.
And I guess you can't say North Carolina doesn't know what it's potentially getting here.
I mean, I think by the time people vote, it'll be very hard for anyone in the state not to know who Mark Robinson is.
If Mark Robinson won in November, what would it say about the political evolution of your state?
I mean, I think at least in terms of policy, it would be the Alabamification of North Carolina in terms of how the legislature governs. I think the politics of the state, I think the policies of the state would quickly move more toward an Alabama kind of situation, because there would be no checks on some of the more radical elements of the legislature. There would be nothing to sort of hold them back on, and things like abortion and gay rights and guns and stuff like that. Right now, even though they have supermajorities, there are a handful of sort of moderate legislators that kind of keep everything in check, and that would no longer matter.
Jeff Billman, I'm really grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Jeffrey Billman is a politics and law reporter at The Assembly. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little boost from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.